He wrote his own legend in blood and cipher, daring an entire city to look away, and we never could. The fog that rolls off the Pacific to blanket San Francisco is a natural conspirator, swallowing sounds and shapes, making ghosts of the familiar. And from within that fog, between 1968 and 1969, a phantom emerged. He wasn't a man of shadow and suspicion. He was a creation of his own, a self-proclaimed monster who named himself Zodiac, and he held the Bay Area in a grip of terror not just with his crimes, but with his words. Our story begins not with a body, but with a sound. The frantic, desperate voice of a teenager on a payphone, a voice that would crack the serene surface of a December night and plunge a community into a nightmare that remains unresolved. The victims were often young, their lives shimmering with the unfulfilled promise of the era. David Faraday, just 17, and Betty Lou Jensen, 16, were on their first date, a quintessential American ritual of innocence. They parked their car on Lake Herman Road, a lover's lane known for its seclusion. That seclusion became a death trap. On December 20th, 1968, a car pulled up beside them. There were no shouts, no robbery, just the methodical, brutal execution. 5 rounds from a .22 caliber pistol hit Betty Lou as she fled, killing her instantly. David was shot once in the head at close range. The killer vanished, leaving behind a scene of such senseless violence it baffled investigators. There was no motive, no suspect, only the chilling silence of a puzzle with half its pieces missing. The phantom had drawn first blood, and he was just warming up. Months later, on the 4th of July, 1969, the monster returned. This time, he chose another lover's lane, Lake Berryessa. Darlene Farron, 22, and Michael Mageau, 19, were sitting in her car when another vehicle's headlights speared through the darkness. A man approached, shining a bright flashlight into their eyes. He was calm, methodical. He told them he just wanted their money and their car keys to escape from prison. Then, without another word, he walked back to his car. But he returned. This time, he was different. He was wearing a bizarre executioner's hood, a dark, square-shaped garment with a crosshair-like symbol stitched onto the chest. He carried a flashlight taped to the barrel of a 9mm Luger. He raised the weapon. "I'm going to have to stab you people," he said, his voice flat and devoid of emotion. He then proceeded to shoot them both before systematically stabbing them multiple times. Miraculously, Michael Mageau survived. When police arrived, he gave a description of the hooded assailant, a detail so grotesque it seemed like something from a horror film, not a police report. The Zodiac was crafting a brand, a terrifying iconography. Then the true game began. 3 days after the Berryessa attack, a letter arrived at 3 Bay Area newspapers, the San Francisco Chronicle, the San Francisco Examiner, and the Vallejo Times-Herald. It was a multi-page confession detailing the murders of Faraday, Jensen, and Farron, with chilling, bragging accuracy, details only the killer and police could know. But this was more than a confession. It was a manifesto and a challenge. Enclosed with the letter was a cipher, a complex code of symbols and letters. The Zodiac demanded it be printed on the front page of the papers. "If you don't want me to do this," he wrote, "you must do 2 things. 1. Tell everyone about the bus bomb. 2. I would like to see some nice Zodiac buttons walking around town." He signed it with the crosshair symbol. The public was electrified and terrified. A cipher, a demand for buttons. This was a killer who craved not just infamy, but engagement. He wanted a dialogue with the world he was terrorizing. Within days, a married couple of amateur cryptologists cracked the code. It revealed a narcissistic, grandiloquent screed. "I like killing people because it is so much fun. It is more fun than killing wild game in the forest, because man is the most dangerous animal of all." The phantom had a voice, and it was more monstrous than anyone could have imagined. The stakes escalated with terrifying speed. On September 27, 1969, the Zodiac struck again, this time in the heart of San Francisco. He targeted a young couple, Cecilia Shepard and Brian Hartnell, at Lake Berryessa. But his most audacious attack came just weeks later, on October 11th, in San Francisco's Presidio Heights neighborhood. He hailed a cab driven by Paul Stein, a 29-year-old part-time student. As Stino drove down Washington Street, the passenger in the back seat raised a 9mm pistol and shot him once in the head at point-blank range. The killer then calmly took Stein's wallet and keys and tore a piece of his blood-soaked shirt. This time, he was almost caught. 3 teenagers saw the man leaning into the cab and called police, describing a white male with glasses and a crew cut. Crucially, they saw him walk away, not run. Police units swarmed the area, and in a catastrophic twist of fate, the responding officers were mistakenly told the suspect was a black male. They drove right past the composed, walking figure of the Zodiac, who melted back into the foggy night. He had come within a hair's breadth of capture, a fact that seemed only to fuel his arrogance. The letters and taunts continued, each one a fresh psychological assault on a weary public. He sent a piece of Paul Stein's bloody shirt to the San Francisco Chronicle to prove his identity. He threatened to shoot the children on a school bus. He claimed to have killed as many as 37 people. Each communication was a media event, sending police on frantic wild goose chases and deepening the myth. The investigation became a labyrinth, with multiple jurisdictions and a suspect pool that seemed to include every average-looking man in Northern California. There were promising leads, of course. The most famous was Arthur Leigh Allen, a man who fit the physical description, owned a watch engraved with the Zodiac's crosshair symbol, and was identified by a surviving victim, Mike Mageau, decades later. He was a convicted child molester with a deep-seated rage against women and society. Investigators were convinced they had their man, but the evidence was circumstantial, a tapestry of compelling connections that frayed at the most critical point, the physical proof. Handwriting samples never definitively matched. His fingerprints did not match those lifted from Paul Stein's cab. The case against Arthur Leigh Allen was a fortress built on sand, strong in appearance but unable to withstand the legal tide. And then, as abruptly as he began, the communications slowed, and the killings attributed to him stopped. The phantom fell silent. The letters became less frequent, the ciphers ceased, and the Bay Area, slowly, began to breathe again. The terror had lasted less than 2 years, but its shadow would stretch for decades. Arthur Leigh Allen remained the prime suspect until his death in 1992. On his deathbed, one of the original investigators visited him and posed one final direct question. "Are you the Zodiac?" Allen's response was a simple, enigmatic, "I'm not going to answer that." The case grew cold, but never forgotten. It became an American obsession, a dark puzzle that has consumed the lives of professional detectives and amateur sleuths alike, each one hoping to be the one to crack the final code, to put a name to the phantom. The true climax of this story is not a courtroom verdict or a dramatic confession. It is the haunting, unresolved silence. It is the realization that the Zodiac E's greatest trick was not his ability to kill and vanish, but his genius for weaving himself into the fabric of our culture, becoming a permanent specter in the annals of true crime. He proved that the most terrifying monster is not the one who hides in the shadows, but the one who steps into the light, mails you a letter, and dares you to find him before he writes again. He is a ghost, not because he is dead, but because he was never truly known, his identity dissolving into the same fog from which he first emerged, leaving behind only a trail of Ciphers victims and a single chilling legacy. He promised us slaves in the afterlife, but all he left behind were ghosts. If stories like this keep you hooked, hit subscribe for more.